Okay, whatever. Fuck this. Stay put. Think you can do that? Fuck. Fuck. Fuck me. Fuck me. Fuck. Okay, let's see if this works. No. Turn. How do you lock this goddamn thing? Fuck. Cancel. Is this okay? It's held by a fucking thread. No. Jesus Christ. Okay, can we start? Can we start my week off correctly? Now, how do I make this work better? Can I move it that way? Do you think? Yes. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Okay, let's see if I can put these things away so I can actually see what the hell I'm doing. I think I have a pencil to match this. I just discovered when I was putting pens away. So I guess I'm going to have to keep this one. Even though it's more modern than I normally like. So what I did over the past few days, I'll try to tell you, and this is in no particular order. Okay, I put platinum carbon ink in these pens, and you can see how well they work. So, useless, right? I don't have time to fuss with this. So where's my carbon platinum ink bottle? Hello, everyone. I'm putting, I put carbon platinum ink in 4 fountain pens to see if in fact it works. And this lovely Webster, I discovered it doesn't work in that one. So let's put that away. This Sheaffer, you can see how well it writes. I'm not interested in doing that. I want it to work. So empty it out of its ink. Oh, fuck. It just spat at me because the ink channel is clogged. So no on this one. I need to find a pressure bar for this pen. Hello, Frederick. Hello, Dimitri. So this is a lovely pen, but its feed channel was too thin or something for this carbon ink. fail. Here's another Schaefer pen. I don't see, this is not good. N-O-T, good. Bad. B-A-D. So let me, yeah, Dimitri does, as of last time I spoke with him, he does seem very happy with his pens. Okay, so this one, okay, now the only one that functioned with carbon ink in it consistently was this pen. It's a Waterman, broken end, missing a band, whatever, plating on the clip, I don't care. At least with only a little tiny bit of hesitation, it starts up. So this one, the carbon platinum ink, seems to work. But my suggestion is if anyone is planning on using carbon platinum ink in a fountain pen, be aware that it may not work. Now, my actual advice would be use a Waterman pen with a big spoon feed, not little nooks and crannies like a Schaefer feed, but a nice big spoon feed, so in case it does get clogged, it's easy to excavate the crud. So this one is really the only one that works. I will remember that for the next 5 minutes. Well, I'm happy to send you off another dozen pens if you want to buy them, because I am very broke. So now, continuing with my day, I live in a very fun building, and we have a section of the building where we put things we want to get rid of, and we take things that we want to keep, or we think we want. So I found a lamp or two recently. I found a book or two recently, and among the books that I found recently was this one. She Comes First, The Thinking Man's Guide to Pleasuring a Woman. Now, I've never... Why is the tongue mightier than the sword? Explain the Jackson Pollock lick. I don't even... I am scared to death to actually read this book. The clitoris has 18 parts. God, it's like, sounds like a Schaefer fucking snorkel. All of which play a role in the production of pleasure. True or false? Are you ready to get down to business and think outside her box? This is just disgusting. This is just vile. She comes first. But wait. He comes next. Let's find out how many parts of the penis there is. Name the 3 types of erections that all men experience. God, I don't even know if I can name one kind. What's the difference between orgasm and ejaculation? What is the best sex toy money can't buy? Do you use your fantasy to navigate his unique sexual love map? Is it impossible for a man to fake it? That is very false. You can You can pretend you're having sex with someone entirely different than the person you're having sex with. I think that would be called faking it. A properly administered pelvic massage can lengthen a man's penis. Most men long to be sexually dominated. Well, I have a feeling that if I read those books, I will have nightmares for the rest of my natural life. So, this is what else I did. I'll just continue with my little things I did. I took this little book to Mount Auburn Cemetery the other day to draw, and I meant to take a different book to Mount Auburn Cemetery and draw, but I forgot it at home, so I ended up using this in my iPad. So this is a photo album that a photographer in my building dumped in quantity, because who buys photographs anymore? And this paper has a nice texture to it on one side, and then on the flip side of the paper, it's a little less textural. So this side is good, this side is not good. So I took my Prismacolor pencils and I drew the scenery at Mount Auburn. My favorite drawing in the entire book was of this headstone, which was under some bushes, sort of over here in this little grouping. And it had a little offset rectangle, as I show it here, plain, and over here, offset it lower, not in the middle, not at the top, not on the right side, but right over here was the word wife. So I looked around to see if there was one that said mistress, but I couldn't find one. And then I did this one, and then the mosquitoes attacked me. So I'll save this book to do it some more. A few days ago, I went to, as you can see so clearly, what ink is this? As you can see, it doesn't dry. It doesn't dry. This pen I got from a friend of mine who has used and does use Nathan's ink that never dries. So maybe that's why this is not drying on me. This is the Chinatown Gate. And one of the things about the Chinatown Gate is that I like, or anything I like to, when it comes to drawing, I don't like drawing it centered, because let me just show you. Let's pretend I was at the Chinatown Gate. And the Chinatown Gate looks essentially like this. It has this gate, it has a roof, it has another thing, it has another roof. Does it have a third roof? I can't even remember. And then it has sometimes little dangly balls flipping about in the wind. I think it only has two, but it may have three. Does it have three? It has only two. Okay, so I don't know whether you can tell, but this side is the same as that side, essentially. There's a few things that are different. There's lettering across here that is not mirrored. If the wind is blowing this way, these things go like that, rather than like that. It's not an exact mirror image. And if there's shadows, you'll have shadows that will hit in certain ways that are not symmetrical. But it's still essentially, this half is the same as that half. And why do a drawing that has half of it the same as the other half? So I pick angles that are very I zoom in and pick angles that are very different and not symmetrical. I crop things. Here you see just part of the gate. Here's a building obscuring it. And to me, this is much more interesting than looking straight ahead at it or almost straight ahead. This guy was looking relatively straight ahead at it. He had a very nice, beautiful drawing. He was using a Fude nibbed pen to great advantage. And I looked at the drawing he did, and I had forgotten that he was using that pen. I would have liked to have borrowed it for 5 minutes and tried my hand with it. Here he is again, and here is another urban sketcher. And she was sitting on a little stool, big long legs, and she had her iced coffee, she had her water, she had her watercolors, she had her sketchbook, she had, I don't know, she probably had her 2021 tax forms balanced there as well. And she was able to do it without spilling or causing problems. I guess it, oh. Huh. Is that what it looks like? That's what it looks like. It looks like this. Having looked at that drawing, it looks like this. It has a base. It has a roof that only goes like this on the sides because there's a big flat sign here. And then it had something else coming up here, and then it had a real roof. Goes all over the. Is that what it looks like? That's what my drawing looks like. It looks like. Suppose I could find a picture of it. See, this is the sign. So this is all one flat area. Okay, whatever. So, is this dry yet? No. What is wrong with that ink? Neville? Okay, where did Neville's pen go? So he came here to get a Frankenpen nib exchanged. He had a nib that was in its heyday in 1880. The nib looked like that. Very long, very flexible. And at some point, something cracked. So what he did was took out the nail clippers or the hacksaw or whatever, and he chopped it off like that completely. So it's this big, flexible stub nib that has no iridium on it. And it's kind of sloppy. It's flexible. It might have been a lovely nib once upon a time, but it turned into one that was sloppy. Let me just show you how it wrote. See, it wrote like this. So, anyway, I do. Stewart, Conway Stewart. So this is a pen that I got from Neville yesterday. It's a hand-hammered Edward Todd pen. Now, in its lifetime, Neville Bedford added an extra hammer. Now, this was that dent, he said, was from slamming it in his car door. And it also, in its previous life, before Neville got it, I'm sure someone had decided to try to obscure the initial or the names that was on the cartouche here. And Susan Worth, who was a friend of his, as well as all of us, for some reason changed the section. And I don't understand why she did that, or why he asked her to do that. But after the change, he never liked the pen. And I'm guessing, I do not know, but I am guessing that there's a little tiny bit of a step down here that really bothers me. And if it bothers me, it may have bothered him. But what's nice about the pen is I sort of want to hold it farther back than I normally I'd hold it up here, but somehow this particular pen, I don't know what it is about it, but I want to hold it way back so it doesn't bother me. Now, see this, I can tell that this has cruddy ink in it. It has ink that has crud, like solid particulate. Not just, powder, but boulders and gravel. I mean, big chunks of particulate. And of course, I'm filling it and unfilling it with water that has all of that carbon ink crud in it too. So I will put good old Waterman ink. Neville is trying to, with his chemistry set and his kitchen table, he is trying to come up with a black that's also dries shiny and glossy. So, Neville, good luck. Good luck with that one, Neville. Anyway, I really love the hand hammered part. Sometimes you see fake hand hammered, but I think this is real. I think it's legitimate. Sometimes people have taken a 51 sterling silver 51 cap and sanded the lines off of it and gotten out their ball peen hammer and just blasted away at the thing to turn it into something that looks like a rare original, but of course it isn't. Anyway. Well, this was not necessarily in the wild. This was in Neville Bedford's little zippered case. It's not like I found it on the street. Let me just find, flaccid erect. Yes, the penis is highly concentrated with nerve endings. Why did someone underline this? Did one really have to do that? Stroking his heart on. I'm way too selfish a person to give one shit about the person that I might be dealing with. That's not entirely true, but it might as well be true these days. Look at me. I'm a chocolate mess already. Is this an Edward Todd nib? Wow. It's an Eversharp. It's an Eversharp flexible nib. Well, what is that doing in here? It's lovely. We have a Franken pen. We've got the wrong section, the wrong nib, or the right nib and the wrong everything else, or the, who knows what this is, but it's a favorite of mine now. So Dimitri, would you like to be on screen? See, this is way, I like ink that does that. You know, it doesn't have evidence of boulders and dirt and pieces of carbon, pieces of old dinosaurs. Just give me good old-fashioned chemicals. Okay, let me fill this up and then okay. Invite, copied, paste. There's something really nice about the weight of this pen. It's so, if I hold it here down, it seems like it would do this in slow motion. If I let go even the tiniest bit, it would fling off and cause a Jackson Pollock blood splatter spray. So holding it here makes it feel more secure. The balance of weight is further in, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. And add to stream. Hello there, Dimitri.
Hello.
We need to get you a, not that there's anything wrong with looking up at your chin, but we need to get you a setup where you can aim down so we can see you writing sometime.
Right.
Now what I'm using is a bent hanger and a nail, essentially. But so you want more pens, huh?
Well, I got the bug now, so what's like I can tell you that each one has a personality and actually changes with, I guess, with my mood or personality. I'm noticing that like I was a little bit shocked. I'm like, why is this pen writing differently? And it was reacting to the way I was writing, right? So I find
Well,
like yeah, they're
they
just
they
so
be
reactive.
they become a dance partner with you, and if you are, I mean, your hand and your brain and uh,
Mood.
mood, your heart, and the pen. The pen is less changeable, but it doesn't have the mood swings that we do. But because the pen is such a good uh, delivery service
Yeah.
from your heart and brain to the line it makes on the paper, um, it will change depending on your mood. And what is really great is when if you have, if you, if there was a third book in this series, it would be your pen comes with you. You know,
Oh gosh.
you orgasm together when you get to
Oh,
know your pen as well as you should. You will, if you're in a particular mood, you will say, okay, I'm going to grab the green pen
yeah.
because that is the one that is most in tune with my mood right now. But
Yes.
if you didn't have your green pen, if it was, you left it in your suit at the dry cleaner or something, um, you would pick up the silver pen and you would know it well enough to know how to make it, how to satisfy its needs as it is satisfying your needs. So again, to use the terminology of those awful books, uh, you and your pen orgasm together.
Well, you've heard the saying, it's usually a Zen saying that says, you know, is the horse riding the rider or is the rider riding the horse?
Yes.
That's actually a bit of a trap if you answer that question, because really there is no horse, there is no rider. You're one.
Yeah.
So what happened with me is, with the normal, let's say, Chinese pens, to call them
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I got some Italian ones too, but they all use Chinese or German nibs. With those, because they have very narrow range of expression,
Yeah.
um, I got you even though if your mood changes, it's hard to see that on the paper. With these
Yes.
things, I'm going through them every day. It's like at first I was confused. I'm like, well, why is it writing like this? Yesterday it was writing like that. Today's writing like this, and it was
Uh,
me. It
it
was
was
so
you.
like confused. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yeah.
I find the Schaefer. Like the first one I grabbed the Schaefer, it was like surgical. It was
Yeah.
like I was so precise and so it was like I could do microsurgery with it.
Yeah.
Just wonderful. And then the other day it felt like a little stubbish, or not stub, just rough. It was
Yeah.
me. I wasn't
Yeah.
focused.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a matter of the pen is writing me. I'm not
Yeah.
writing it.
Yeah.
The pen
I
is,
mean,
and that's
the, the,
skills. But you have such a skill. See,
the
now to relate to you, when I
yeah.
watch you, you have such a skill, and you have all this emotion, and these things express you. And there's a point where you and the pen are one.
Yeah.
I would
I,
guess.
I, in a way, the pen sort of disappears and I disappear and we're drawing,
Yeah.
the Chinatown gate or whatever we're doing. And I'm paying attention to the shadows rather than my hand and rather than the pen. But I do like the fact that I know I have a Schaefer pen just exactly like your Schaefer pen, and some, or as alike as they can be. And because no two are alike, really, these old ones especially. Um, I I know that 9/10 of the time it wants to I think it wants to draw this kind of a drawing. I'm drawing very, very lightly. In fact, that was one of the pens that I brought to Mount Auburn Cemetery because I wanted to draw these tombstones with the finest line and then use my ink brush to sort of dissolve the ink so they almost appear sort of ghostly. That was my thought. And I thought, well, having this pen that gives this little tiny line that barely has width to it would be perfect. And but I forgot the sketchbook that day, and I'm over at the Chinatown gate, and it's 90 fucking degrees out. And not only is it the Chinatown gate, but it's Chinatown, and they were having this dragon parade, and along with the dragon were these 3 or 4 people pounding away on drums that was just making me angry.
Beating on your nerves.
So I was using that pen, which I had planned on using it to draw these very ghost-like tombstones in a quiet, bucolic cemetery. Instead, I'm in hot Chinatown listening to these endless drummers drumming. I kept on telling my fellow sketcher, do they know another tune? Because it was just, there was no melody. It was just pound, 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 pound. Occasionally there would be more pounds per whatever the measure than others, but they all were equally boring. So anyway, I found myself using this pen more aggressively than I wanted to. And of course, the Chinatown gate is made of all sorts of sharp lines, and the calligraphy, the Chinese calligraphy is made of these slash marks of, there's not curves, they're not graceful curves, they're just, like you're taking an axe. You're writing with an axe and chopping at this thing. So it was a very different experience than I had intended to use that pen. And the pen, though, being dumb, did not and does not have a will of its own, of course. If you look at it, it doesn't have a will of its own. It will submit to my demands. But that's not a very poetic way to look at it. Looking at it is more like your horse and your rider. And so you now, I'll send you the official graduation certificate. You are now, in fact, hooked.
Oh yeah.
And
yes,
I'm really surprised that did not happen to Minimal Scholar. I would have thought for sure he would have
at least one
seen such difference in these things. But again, it could be with him.
Yeah.
There might have been just one part of the whole thing. Maybe if all the pens I had shined up and made polished and made look as new as they could, maybe that was it. They were all, dirty and tarnished. And maybe it was the fact that maybe he really likes a nib that has very little flexibility. And here I'm trying to want him to like something that he doesn't like. So, but
maybe expression isn't the thing. Like when you look at the kind of pens he has, I mean, they're really great instruments, but they're really finely tuned. So maybe when you're a master and you've got your tool and you become one with it, it's harder for you to now shift gears. For me, I'm not really attached, so it's easy for me to keep exploring. So maybe he's so attached to his pens that he just can't fathom.
Well, he gets new pens all the time, I think. And
but not
Fred
this type.
Fred just says it's the package and size with them. Most of the pens he has are a little larger. And they are, when you look at them, they are pretty.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
maybe
It's the look then.
maybe he has, you know, a Packard touring car, and no matter what kind of uh, Chevy I
Mhm.
give him, or what kind of Bugatti
No.
I give him, or something, he wants the car that he's in to
Wow.
be large and elegant
So
looking.
so that's interesting because see, I didn't think of
Maybe.
that. I thought he could go beyond the appearance and go with the feel, the expression. But maybe he's not expressively writing. He's actually using his left side of his brain when he's writing, isn't he? He's very
I don't
analytical.
know. I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting if you and he
Yeah.
could talk together, because I wouldn't want to say anything that
No.
would think he would be, that I would mischaracterize him. But I know that based on what I see him, how he organizes his notes and his journal keeping, he's
Mhm.
very, very organized. And
Yes.
I think that, um, even though, would he want to put a square peg in a round hole? I don't know whether he would
Yeah.
even want to try to do that. But I I think he probably has a square hole and a pentagon hole and a hexagonal hole and an octagonal hole. He has the way to get all the way from a square to a circle, and he appreciates that, but only one peg goes in that circle.
That's it. He's
and
stuck. He's
and
set in his ways.
well, see, when you say stuck and set in your ways, I think that that's negative. That's a negative
Oh,
term. I think
well,
that I don't want to do that with him, because
no.
I think he's much more
Yeah.
um, uh, fluid in
Mm.
what he does, but he just has to have the exact right tool to do the exact thing that he wants to do. Whereas, again, if I wanted this pen to draw the tombstones and I brought this one with me, I would try out this pen, and then I'd figure out a way to draw the tombstones a little differently. I would not do the work. I would draw the tombstones with this pen. I would just have a different idea or something. Again, with him, I think, and again, I might be entirely wrong. I know that he grinds his pens and he uses different inks for different things.
Mm.
I have a feeling that when he picks up the pen, this pen is going to do one particular thing for him. And when he wants to do another particular thing, he'll use a different pen and a different ink.
Mhm.
Maybe the pens maybe the flexibility of the nibs, maybe said, gee, this pen can do three different things.
Oh,
And I don't want a pen to do that. I want a pen to do the one thing that I want it to do.
I
And I have
need
a
a
different
fork.
pen.
I need a spoon.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, I'm trying to word this in a way
Yeah.
that isn't at all negative to him, because
No.
I I I find
Yeah.
his what I think his shtick is, I really think is very, very interesting. And I wish I had that ability in my own self to turn that button on and see the world sort of through his eyes. Whereas
Hmm.
I need chaos in my life.
Yeah.
I need things that aren't in a
Well,
row. And
you're an artist, right?
well,
He.
I'm an artist, but there are
Yeah.
artists that work like he writes as well.
Right.
They have a paintbrush that they use. Like, for example, Neville gave me, or we traded services for this. When I say service, I don't mean what those books are saying. But
Obviously.
what I did was, though, he said, I saw those drawings you're doing with those water pens, so I brought you these pens, but these don't have the water. You have to supply the water. But this is a set of Chinese
Yeah. Nice.
pens. Now, each one of these brushes, presumably, does something different from the other brushes.
Nice.
Now, I'm scared to even try to
Mhm.
figure out what these things will do, because I don't think I have the ability in my brain to understand the difference between this brush and that one. They look the same, but one is probably, one clearly is made of one kind of extinct fur, and the other's
Yeah.
made of a different kind. And this was made out of what you had for lunch, and this is what we're having for dinner. You know, the meat of the animal, whatever the animal is. I'm sure that
Yeah,
uh,
there's this
there
horse and there's ox and there's all sorts of
there's cat
yeah.
and there's dog and there's no there's but so I feel that these are way too sophisticated for me.
Mm,
Now maybe a pen that has a flexible nib
yes.
with as much flex as
Yeah.
some of them that I gave him
Same
is
thing.
so outside of his
Range.
comfort zone, let's say,
Yeah.
um, and that he doesn't want to do that. So, uh,
I think.
and Frederick is saying he's very compartmentalized. Now, I think,
Yeah.
um,
Probably.
uh, yeah, I mean, I think Frederick, I think you're right. If I were to secretly take a pen that he uses sparingly and take it here and put in a nice Waterman flexible 100-year pen nib in it or something and slip it back into his little box. And he takes it and he's expecting one thing.
No,
And he
he wouldn't
suddenly
want.
sees this range that it has and this magic that it
Mhm.
has that's different, or its difference with what he had. Maybe he by accident would say, "Oh my God, I can't." It's like green eggs and ham. You know,
Yeah.
I like it now. You know, because, but I think also, I think, I mean, you were. I was afraid about you, Dimitri,
Hmm.
in that as the pens took longer and longer to get to you, or in your case, you to get to the pens that were sitting there waiting for a week and a half or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
You were building up this idea that each of these pens was going to be perfect, and I thought, oh God, you know, one might be scratchy, one might be to this, to that. So I was thinking by the time you opened them, you would have built them into these magnificent things.
Yeah, I did.
That, and but and and I sort of was sensing that when you were trying them out, and I was saying, oh, you know, he's saying really nice things, but you know, I can tell he really doesn't like them. But you do like them because you once you got over this imagined perfection that all of these would have,
Yeah.
um, you then looked at them realistically and you
Yeah.
said, this pen doesn't go from 0 to 10. It goes from 2 to 7, and it goes from 2 to 7 in a certain way,
Hmm.
and it makes a certain noise, and it smells a certain smell, and it fits in my hand a certain way. So all of these things started adding up, and then you forgot about what it was supposed to do because
Exactly.
you were having so much fun with what it does.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think that
we tend to live. Unlike you, you're always using the pens. If you're constantly observing YouTubers writing, then you're living in your mind and you're anticipating
yeah,
what these things would do. So when I grabbed it, I'm like, I can't do what Pierre can
yeah,
do. I'm like,
yeah,
but I know the pen. Well, what's amazing is that pen could do these wonderful things, and I'm like picking it up and it's doing nothing, and I'm like, what is going on? And I couldn't even do what I normally do with the normal pens, so I had to
yeah,
really calibrate. I had to get the courage to write normally. I
yeah,
was writing differently with them.
yeah,
So once I got over the fear of them because I was scared,
yeah,
I just went wild. Like I tend to go pretty wild with my pens, so I
yeah,
started to play with them. And I'm like, okay, they could do that,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
thing is, how?
You know, I once you understood that you could press down as much as I was pressing down
Yeah,
to
I
get
was
a
scared.
thick line, then you knew that it wouldn't break and it was fine. I didn't mean that you had to copy the way I was writing, of course. What I wanted
I
you to
can't.
do was just know that the thing was working. I don't know what made me think of when you talked about the idea of not being able to do what I do, made me think of this, I'm sure it's apocryphal story of Michelangelo
Mm.
and a student of his. And his student said, you know, I've been trying to draw these grapes, this bowl of grapes, and I can't get it right. I can't get it right. Can you help me? And so Michelangelo went up to the canvas and said, "Okay, I'll fix it for you, but you can't watch me. You have to go out of the room." And the student went out of the room, and Michelangelo, all Michelangelo did was take a cloth and cover the still life. And he said, "Okay, come back in." And the guy said, "Oh, you fixed it perfectly." And and I mean, it's sometimes that's all you have to do is cover the thing you're trying to copy
Hmm.
or trying to be, and
Yeah.
just appreciate what you're doing, and it's fine.
It's
Um,
hard. It's hard to
you,
do.
it's
Get out of your head and just express.
you know, so writing normally. I mean,
Takes courage.
That's often why I tell when people are when I'm watching people try pens in front of me at a pen show, and they're doing this, and they're trying to go up and down very carefully, and they're trying to write the quick goddamn brown fox. And I said, okay, stop, take a letter. I want you to write as fast as you can the letter I'm dictating to you. And they're trying to write as fast as they can, so they're not worried about making the downstrut right, they're not making the L right, and they're not making it pretty. And suddenly they're getting thick and thins automatically,
Mhm.
because that's what the pen in their hand are doing automatically. They don't have to think about it. And I said, see, just write normally.
Scribble
You don't have to think about what you're doing.
until
Yes,
you
of
get
course.
used to it. Yep.
It was a sculpture. Okay, Russell's correcting my story. There was this website that was put up by graphic designers who loved showing the emails of uh, of their clients and what they were doing to try to make their clients happy, and they would often just send them back the same exact thing that they had sent them before that they didn't like, saying, "Oh, very good idea. I've taken your suggestions and here it is." And it's exactly the same, and the
Same
client was
thing.
happy. Or the client would say something like, design a logo like Facebook has because I want to be a billionaire. Okay, the logo is not what makes Facebook
No.
successful. The logo is the least important part. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was, see, Russell, can I propose to you again, Russell? I don't want Google. I just want Russell. I just want Russell to be the factoids. All of the factoids I need are right in his little database. So anyway, let's do this. Do you talk with Minimal Scholar at all?
Me, no. I don't know very much about him. Just occasionally on.
Do you follow him at all on?
No. Actually, only when that one time.
Well,
Uh,
if I would love to have you,
mhm.
Mr. Vertical and Mr. Round,
Yeah.
on side by side, where where you're both journal keepers. You're both pen lovers and fountain pen lovers. I think that, and he has this whole spiel he did about sharpening pencils. and how that the zen of getting it. So I know that he
Oh.
has that thing going for him. But I also know that he's very, as Frederick says, I think he's very compartmentalized, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I would love to know how to use each of these 10 brushes or 12 or whatever. What are the differences between them? And I'm afraid even to dip them in ink, because it looks like the red ones are used for red ink or something.
So,
So
Pierre, did
yeah,
he, like, I don't know how it transpired. Like, what goes through my mind is he even searching for a new experience?
I don't.
Because it might be that he's so satisfied with what he
He
has.
might be very satisfied with what he
Yeah.
has, but
But maybe
again,
he was curious. Maybe he was curious, eh?
I think he was curious. I think it was
Yeah.
me that was sticking my nose into his
Yeah.
business. But again, and I know that there are some people whose business my nose does not belong. And, there are people who I get along with perfectly fine, and I can understand their business fine. Um, Aphex Data, for example, he likes a certain kind of pen
Yeah.
that is very smooth. I think that's the top list of what he likes.
Priority.
I don't know what's making that noise, but
My bird.
your bird. Okay.
He
There you are. There it is. So again, I think it's just really fascinating, the difference between how we all deal with the pens we have. And again, I think your conversations with him,
mhm.
because up until the package that I sent you, your experience had mainly been with modern pens only.
Yes.
And his experience is with modern pens only. Now, what and what your both your needs are, and but what both
They're
your
different.
expectations are they're probably very different. But that's what I like about the idea that there are so many different kinds of people
Yeah.
and so many different kinds of pens in this world that will
Yeah.
make us happy.
Mhm.
um, and I want to understand. I mean, right now we've been using a lot of what we might normally think of as negative terms to describe his uh, take, and we're using them to describe him without his permission, and we're sort of guessing. Um, and but compartmentalization that Frederick used is a good word. That's a good thing. Compartmentalization is, putting a octagonal peg in a duodecimal hole will not work as well as a 12-sided peg in the 12-sided hole.
Mhm.
There can be a way to force it, I suppose, with a sledgehammer, but there's nothing wrong with compartmentalizing. I think that, but it's just curious. I would like to know what it is about the pens. It could have been they were smaller than he thought they'd be. They were filthier than they thought they'd be.
You know
Uh,
what? It's probably a combination of things. That
yeah,
when I'm trying to solve problems that are not easily solvable, what I find is that they're complex problems, which
yeah,
means there's three or four variables that are playing off each other, that you now have to figure out how the three variables, what they are,
yeah, and
and how
how
they
they work.
interact.
Which one
And
is
that's a very
the first
complex discussion.
variable? Yeah, it's like when they were talking about uh, describing planetary motions around one sun is easy. Around two suns was doable, I think, but around three, there was no way to possibly even comprehend how the planets were going to go.
Right.
And it seems like some people, it's easy to figure out because they have their one thing they do with the pen. I know
Hmm.
that he does different things with the pen. So I thought, though, with him, having a pen that can do essentially 2 or 3 different things that are completely different. You know, you don't have to press down to get a one note line, but you can press down and get a varied line. You can press down and get a thick line. So I thought it might be sort of fun for him to try out a pen that was flexible.
So let's talk about something that we're all very familiar with. Just
Yeah.
to so we're not focused on a different individual that we don't know. Look,
Okay.
for example, let's say we're talking about food. Okay.
Yeah.
So Pierre, I'm gonna suggest that you try something that you've never tried before. Let's say your diet is, see, I don't even know your diet. But let's
Well,
say,
you can say I could try this. I've never done that before.
yeah,
No,
papaya,
I'm
right?
not gonna, I'm
Have
not
you ever
gonna
eaten
do
a papaya?
that.
So papaya is a strange fruit, by the way. Most
Yes.
people, when they bite into a papaya, they're like, "What's this?" It's got a weird texture. It's got a weird, almost neutral flavor, but it's extremely good for you. Very healthy.
Yeah.
So if I were to ask you to eat a papaya, have you ever eaten one?
I may have had.
Yeah. So one thing I find is people, because I feel like I'm a child. I haven't, where Minimal Scholar is probably had years to hone his art,
Yeah.
and he might have compartmentalized, because a lot of the executives that I work with, that's what they are. God forbid you add any variables to their life. They spent
Yeah.
their whole life trying to minimize complexity. They don't like complexity.
Yeah.
They may talk about how, may boast, or their ego might, suggest that they could do many things, but they really hone themselves to be perfectionists at very narrow range. An artist, on the other hand, is somebody who's constantly looking for expression and exploration. And an artist, I characterize artists as being courageous.
Yeah.
So now I see you as courageous, but then I see how you reacted to the Japanese or Chinese brush pens. You're not courageous. You're reacting to those.
Oh, well, I mean, if I would, if they were the only pens, brushes that I had, I would just use them. And the thing with eating anything, and trying out a brush like that, I have a very, when it comes to things other than pens, really, and maybe some paper, I don't really have a good memory. Like if eating a papaya made me healthy, but I wouldn't know for a week and a half, I would have forgotten what I ate. Was it that 2 scoops of ice cream that I had at breakfast that did the trick, or was it the papaya that did the trick, or the banana that I ate? I wouldn't know.
You'd have to have a journal.
Well, see, I don't do that. For me, anything that happened in the past, which means the fall of Rome or 2 minutes ago, it all goes into one big hopper. And I don't know
Doesn't
how
matter.
I don't know how to retrieve things out of that thing. I never look back. I just go forward.
So you live in the moment.
In the future.
Well, you
and
probably live in the moment.
Well, I don't think that, I think that requires too much. I think I live in the moment when I'm, the once, maybe when I had sex that was really good, and another time when thought I was going to die because I was on a pair of skis going down the bunny hill with my brother a couple of years ago. I had never been on skis before. I thought I was going to die. I was living in the moment as I was screaming.
Okay, so that's what we call being alive. When you're in the moment, you're alive.
Well,
most of the
time I am not alive. Believe it or not.
What I
but
mean
anyway,
by that is,
well, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And
when you're in the future, you're not in the present, which means you're in your head.
I'm in my head.
Yes.
Is where I am most of the time. I'm in my head. I'm not in my body. I'm not in the moment.
So we want to be in our bodies.
So we want to be in our bodies. So to be in our bodies with those brushes, the right way would be me to, maybe before I even try one out, is to research it to make sure I'm using the right ink in them, with them, and then practicing to make sure that I'm using the right paper with the right ink with the right brush.
But see, Pierre, sorry to interrupt,
but that's not how I work.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that's the way you are. Why would you
No,
keep saying sure to be sure? Why wouldn't you just dive in and experiment? And what's the
I,
worst that
w-
could happen?
so the thing is, I would dive in. In fact, we'll just do it right now, right now in front of live TV. I will take this brush right out of the
Yeah,
middle,
just dive in.
and I'm going to dip it into Schaefer ink, which I'm sure was never intended for this pen, pencil, brush, whatever it is, and then I will make a line with it. Now, the thing is, when I put this brush away and wash it out and put it back in its little thing and I will, by the time it goes back in, I will forget how this
Yeah,
brush worked. Now I can tell that this brush is doesn't have a point on it and is going to be very different
yeah.
from the brush I just used. So I can tell in some cases that they're going to be, one will be sloppy, one will be nice, one will hold a lot of ink. But whether I'll remember exactly the sort of thing I should
Some are more
remember,
springy.
yeah,
Some
yeah,
hold a point better.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
imagine there's a full range of stuff about those brushes that I don't know. Normally, I just grab whatever brush is closest. Normally, almost normally I grab whatever pen just happens to be on my desk, and I will remember it, and I'll grab the two or three that have the different nibs,
Hmm.
so I can go out drawing. But um, uh, and I think I live for the moment when I'm drawing. When I'm drawing, I
Yes.
am in the moment. When I, but again, I don't know how to remember things as well as your CEO does of this big company, this executive. Now, the
Yeah.
executive he's, he's essentially piloting a 747 with 5 trillion controls and a bunch of people and a bunch of money. And of course, he doesn't want to experiment or try new things. I'm in
He's
a,
autopilot.
I'm well,
He's
no, he's not.
actually
Well,
he's
he might be
perfected his.
autopilot, but he knows exactly how
Yeah.
everything is working. Whereas I might, I might be trusted with a glider on the smallest hill um, in if you're in Iowa and you find the smallest hill in Iowa, I might be
Wow.
trusted to go off of that with my glider. That's it. I I can be in the moment and I can turn this way and if I hit a corn stalk, I'm not going to die. But if so there's nothing wrong with the CEO of flying the 747 because I trust him to do it because he knows what he's
Yes.
doing. I would never trust myself in the 747.
No,
Um,
your skills are different.
the drink cart says the stewardess. Okay. Frederick gets
Mm.
to the important part. I realize now that I need to, I have laundry that is now clean that has to go from the washer to the dryer. Russell, are you still here? Or Frederick? Does anyone else want to get online and talk with Dimitri while I do change my laundry?
So Pierre, you're going to pick some pens for me.
I am, but I'll talk to you about it in a minute. Let me just see if
Sure,
anyone
sure.
else wants to join in. I have a pen that is I keep wanting to keep for myself.
Hmm.
There's actually, but it's a pen that has your name written all over it, even
Is
though I
it
want to keep it.
flexible?
Well, I will, if I remember where I put it, I will show you.
Okay.
I actually have to put laundry in real quick. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
Russell,
Do that.
okay. Does Frederick have to do that too? Frederick, can you be online? Can you put on a shirt, Frederick? You don't have to put on pants. You may not know this, Dimitri, but my channel is clothing optional. There's a lot of people that
Yeah, it's well, we're
before they join me, they have to put clothes on, and I don't know what it is about my channel that makes people want to be naked around me, but uh, I see that you don't share that desire because you at least always seem to be wearing a shirt.
well, it's the air conditioning is not on, so there are times where I take my shirt off as well.
Okay. Well, I've just plugged my device in to power, and Russell, I tell you what you do. Russell, you jump on, and you while I run downstairs to do the laundry, you can keep Dimitri company. Do you know Russell?
Yes, I've seen Russell. Yep.
Yes. Well, Russell is brilliant and uh, is a fountain pen guy that I learned about through Peter Draws and
Oh
his
yes.
and Peter draws
Hmm.
in many different styles. So
Yeah.
I think he really appreciates. He loves modern pens and stiff
Yeah.
nibs and sharpies, and he's all about uh, using whatever tool is in front of him
Yeah.
to make the kind of art he does. He's the most democratic, I think,
Hmm.
even more than Wasky Squirrel is in terms of a tool to use.
Very open.
He's very open to everything.
Yeah.
But when he was saying he was doing his list of 5 favorite pens,
Hmm.
the most favorite of all was a Waterman, 100-year-old Waterman pen that he bought
Yeah.
because of the flexible nib, and he's a little afraid of using it. Uh, and I should let him know that he shouldn't be because
No.
even though he paid a lot of money for that pen, he got a slightly larger size, which meant it was over the $100. In this case, I think he paid more than $200
Two.
for it.
Yeah.
He was getting a pen whose nib you could easily get on a pen that would be half that, if not a third that.
Hmm.
So, okay, we'll wait for Russell to come back. To jump online. So, and then I will try to remember where this pen is.
Do you have any other pens besides that one?
I do have other pens that
There's the Waterman that you gave minimal that
yeah.
looked interesting. And
It's
I'm
very
looking for, I'm trying to figure out how does a Swan nib or a Conway Stewart nib behave?
there the when we're dealing with a pen that's before 1930,
Hmm.
they're all each company made so many different kinds of nibs that I can't make generalizations about them. Really.
That's why I
Uh,
was looking to experience that.
yeah. Well, some I don't know whether you might need to have 100 pens each of each of these companies to see if there is a difference. Now, someone asked me, and I'm trying to remember who. Oh, it was Canada. Now, Canada is another guy that I think you would enjoy talking with because
Hmm.
he's another journal keeper, and he and Effextinol are best buddies. They've got a little bromance going on here about their love of uh, pens, and um, Canada is trying to, and has in fact taught Effextinol to really, really like fine nibs,
Yeah.
and they trade pens to try out and things like that. So they're getting along well. He is someone who, like you, is a journalist, and like Minimal Scholar is a journalist, and I think you're all somewhat cut of the same cloth. You're way loosey goosier than
Wait.
Minimal. You are, I think, loosey goosier than Canada, but and maybe Effextinol, but I don't know.
I,
This
I
is why I want to have all of you talking together
I
because
feel like I'm not. I like journaling for expression and for investigation, but I
yeah,
feel I'm more like um, Peter Draws.
yeah,
I love that kind of doodle. I
okay,
love calligraphy. I like the look at calligraphy as an art form.
yeah,
So what I'm so you misunderstand me. Journaling I do for my mind,
I see.
to calm me down, to
Okay.
but doodling is a form of expression.
Okay. Well, I don't know whether,
So I'm both.
yeah, I'm not sure whether minimal doodles. Oh, here's Russell. Okay,
It's
Russell.
okay. I mean, it'd be nice to talk just to see.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Hello, mister.
Yeah, you do
Hello.
look younger. You look a lot younger.
Well, he uh I when he started growing his beard was at the same time it seemed that he was teaching grade school kids. And I said the only way that they're going to tell you apart is because you have a beard. Because
Yeah.
Russell is also somewhat short in stature. So
Well, the camera makes you look tall.
yes.
You
The
look
Yes, the
you
angle.
look 6 foot. You look 6 foot
Yeah.
easy.
well, how tall are you, Russell?
I'm like 5'7".
That's the camera doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
Okay. I'm going to let you guys chat for a little bit while I do my laundry. So I'll be right back in 3 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Russell.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
This
Yeah,
is Dimitri.
Yep. And Percy.
We met before.
Yeah, we did.
Ah. So what's been going on? I caught the moment in the chat basically when you guys were talking about the technical aspects of pen versus the more expressionistic ones, I think.
Yes. Well, I'm coming at. Okay, so I think what Pierre needs to realize that I'm really new at this, and I have time on my hands now because I got recently unemployed. So I decided. Whoops. So I decided to go back and rediscover my passion for writing and for doodling, for art. So when I started with the the Japanese or Chinese pens or the German nibs, basically they all write the same. So then when I started to see what calligraphers do, what people do with the vintage pens, it's like, whoa, this is intriguing. And I realized that the modern pens can't do that. So that's what got me into this. And I watched Todd Merrill, I think it is. He's got a YouTube channel and he writes, and the way he writes is just very expressive. Like he like I think Pierre says he like fences. Like he just writes like crazy. So that's how I got into this. I just got into it, and then now I'm experimenting, and I'm getting a certain feel for them. Now the thing with Pierre, he's trying to peg me as a vertical writer or a journalist, right? Because he saw what I did, but I'm all over the place. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with this. So that's but it's so interesting to watch people who are journalists or who are really good like Pierre with fountain pens.
Well, one thing that's sort of both endearing and frustrating about our friend Pierre is that he's one of those people that characterizes other people. He likes to say, "Oh, this guy's that guy. He's got this trick," and he doesn't mean any harm by it.
No.
But like he always characterizes me as a brilliant artist or whatever. Whenever actually I'm really just a moron who as I'm like there's a story that Cervantes recounts twice in Don Quixote. About the painter Urbaneja. And Urbaneja would paint a picture, and whenever anybody would ask him what he was painting, he would say, "Whatever happens to be there." And so if he painted and he happened to paint a rooster, he would he would write under it in very fancy writing, a rooster, so that people would know what it was. That's basically my process.
Yeah.
But you keep a journal?
Yes, because what I'm finding is that like I have a lot of things going on, so journals help me get out of my head, worrying about the future, whatever, the past. So it's very calming. So I keep a journal as a therapeutic aid, and it's not like minimal scholar. I'm not very formal. I'm very just basically like doodling.
Yeah. Putting down thoughts, basically.
Yeah,
To keep
and
them
I'm sure one
to
day I'll
keep
get
them
better at it.
from it's almost like putting them onto the paper in order to keep them from crowding up all the space in one's head.
Yeah, and you can see what's in your head, and you also are able to let it go afterwards.
Because once you can externalize something, that turns it like it's almost like with an artwork. You can reify it. You can turn it into a physical object that you can manage.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it's just a thought, it's flying around your head like a ghost and scaring you and popping out of all sorts of corners.
Yes, and that's the whole problem with our mind, right? Unlike animals, we have this function, which is wonderful, but it's also very confusing because you can't grasp thoughts. So one of the meditation techniques is to try to connect your mind with your body. The more you're connecting your mind with your body, the more you let go of the future and the past, and you're in the present. In the present, your problems become more real and you can deal with them. So that's how journaling, I find, and other people will just talk to people, right? That helps them. So it's a tool, and I do love art, but I'm an engineer, so because I don't have the time to express myself with art. So, but I have a passion for art. So that's how I think I came to this position. So it's nice that it's nice that Pierre could see certain things in me. I just don't trust that that I even know what I am. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do and who I am.
Well, I mean, one thing I would ask is, what do you think actually separates engineering from the arts in general?
Exactly. Well, people will look at me and they'll go, "You're not a normal engineer." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because you're so artistic and the way you express and the way you. So people like, unlike Pierre or like Pierre, people like to peg hole people. So engineers are this way, artists are that way. So it's stereotypes. So because most people are social, they want to fit into the societal norms. So stereotype, I'm supposed to be a certain type of person because I got a label on my forehead that says engineer. But I only took engineering because I was good with maths and physics and all that, right? Very analytical. But in my soul, which I'm trying to find, there's a different passion, right? That I didn't explore. So, but the people I work with, engineers, they're very rational and analytical, and they don't go deep in their soul. Their ability is to be able to make things black and white and stay inside those boundaries. As soon as an artist comes into their present and they start to show them grays, they get so confused and so frustrated. They turn on me, right? They really they get really upset, but they love the fact that I solved the problem. But so I did realize after all these years of working with these people, people from NASA, people, all these chemists and physicists and all that stuff, the way their minds work. So
Mm.
I am not what I would characterize a typical engineer in that I'm all over the place. And that's how chaos, I kind of like when Pierre says that. I also thrive in chaos. Complexity like really feeds me, where other people are terrified of complexity. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, there's something I'm trying
No,
to figure.
I think I managed to sort of pull something out from there that may be completely disconnected from what you're trying to tell me, but it sounded to me like engineering, like mathematics itself is something. Mathematics and the things you build with engineering techniques are something themselves separate from from engineering, which is more like an action, right?
Doing,
Engineering as a
build,
verb.
build.
So
Yeah.
so when I think of mathematics, because I've been thinking a lot about perspective recently,
Hmm.
it's basically about taking a limited framework, a limited sight of vision, and putting it over the world in order to make it manageable. And that's what an engineer is all about, right? When you're making a dam, you're literally putting walls over nature
Yes.
in order to make it manageable. And so that I think is that sort of more or less how you might view your different engineering is different from artistry, whereas artistry is about making the world more complex in a certain way or more slippery.
Okay. So two things, 2 points that I picked up from you. One, let's, I mean, let's talk about engineering first. So one, imagine or try to figure out what the difference between a mathematician that you brought up, an engineer, and a scientist is. The difference between an engineer is not, see, my degree is in applied science. I'm not a theoretical scientist. A
Hmm.
scientist will dissect things to their first principles to discover why they work. An engineer is an applied scientist. So we need to just apply the theory, the tools to get a job done. We're builders. All I do is solve problems all day. So I don't really have to understand why I solve the problem. I just got to get things done, which usually has to do with money, productivity,
Mm-hmm.
time. Can I do more with less scrap? Right? Can I make these people work faster? So that's an engineer.
Yeah.
So whether it's a bridge or people or materials or engineers work with things to solve problems, usually to make money. Now, an artist, and we know what scientists do, they're trying to figure out the world. An artist, which I'm not, but an artist is trying to express. It's all about, I mean, look at Picasso. I mean, he could draw like an angel, as they say,
An
but
angel.
but
Yes.
he was all
Him.
about discovering. He was more of a scientist, Picasso. But then this other artist, it's all about performance art. All they want to do is express, because by expressing is what you said earlier. You find what's in the deepest recesses of your soul. So depending what kind of a person you are, you may be using art to express. You may be using art to build, or you may be using art to make money. Right. So what I'm trying to do is figure out what is my deepest essence of who I am. Why? Because I spent so many years becoming the best engineer. And in the process, I became a good engineer, but I've lost my soul. So now that I'm unemployed, everything, my world just fell apart in many ways. It's a good opportunity for me to step back and just to say, okay, who was I when I was born? Who was I before I was born? Right? And before I die, what do I want to do? And because you're so young, you're not really thinking that way. It's usually when you get older where you're thinking about, okay, what's the meaning of life?
Well, I would caution you about worrying too much about essence. In my view, there is no essence. I'm not one thing. I mean, even my own body is made up of loads of cells just happening to work in unison. And that's connected to the trees and the oxygen around me. You can't, and then too, I also can't help but push back on the Picasso thing a bit.
Oh.
At the start of his career, when I definitely think he went through an expressionistic phase, like at the beginning and at the end of his career, but then he went towards like this cubism, analytical cubism, which is sort of about an engineering mindset to art, right? You're trying to see everything, all sides of everything at once, at all points in time, and put it right there on the canvas, which is fascinating, but it never works. And the fun thing about it, though, is that by not working, it works even better at creating new complexities.
Well,
so
he expressed, a vase, or expressed whatever, a face, in a different way. And
yeah,
we value
it's
that.
the failure of art to fully express the world that creates art, right? I think of Tiziano Vecellio, right? The guy, whenever he was painting, he would always paint water and mirrors and reflections, right? Which is hilarious if you think about it, because he's painting images of people looking at images, or images appearing. And so it's always a further imperfect reflection. And going back to Don Quixote, which I always end up doing, he talks about translations of books too. And he says that translations of books are like the backsides of a tapestry, because you can make out the figures, but it's like looking at them through a fog or a mist, because you only see the vague outlines of them. But it brings you a new experience of the world in that way.
Yes. So
Aren't
humans all about it, discovering things and expressing things? Right. No,
I mean, I don't mean to be like arguing with you or trying to antagonize you or anything. I hope I'm not coming across that way, because I just end up getting fascinated by these things.
Yeah, me too. And what they call polemics is not necessarily arguing, right? Basically, you're challenging thoughts. As an engineer, I always test things to see if they will hold water, for example, right? So you have an idea, you need to test it. How do you test it? You put it through fire. You put it through all extremes. I will, hammer things until they break, and that's how I know how strong they are. So I find that people are afraid to challenge thoughts because they identify with the thought, because it's my thought, it's me. And if you challenge my thought, then you've attacked me. But I'm able to separate that. And I find I have to be careful, because some people can't separate. So when I attack their thought, their logic, I'm attacking them. So don't worry about Russell, about me. If you attack my thought, that's cool, because I'm all about understanding what's real or what's there. So yeah, no, don't worry.
Okay. I mean, I also end up thinking, I was listening last evening to somebody talking about the Chernobyl explosion. And one of the reasons it happened is because the bureaucrat that was in charge, well, I don't know how much you know about this, but apparently the nuclear reactor was the Chernobyl explosion. Yeah. So apparently the reactor was something like an RMK reactor, which in theory, because it's on an infinite cooling loop where the water is being recycled constantly, and it has like certain mechanisms that I can't remember.
Yeah.
It theoretically can't overheat and explode ever, because it has an automatic safety system set into it. But there were all sorts of little things. They were supposed to test it, and the and the bureaucrat in charge of it basically just went completely overrode all of these tiny little details that eventually led to the explosion, and nobody challenged him. Because if you challenged his thought process of I need to get this done,
Yes.
then you immediately challenged not just him, but the systems of power that he represented too.
Okay. That's you hit the nail on the head for what I'm trying to do at work, which is each one of us cannot step outside of our bounds, our boundaries of expertise. A hammer can only do so many things. Oh, but I need to reduce cost. I need to reduce, but you can't use a hammer for certain things. To follow that analogy. So yes, what I find is, even myself. I mean, I may try to do my boss's job, or my boss might try to do my job. At the end, if we don't work well together, we don't listen to each other, understand things, we will end up, paying for it.
Exactly.
So there are limits and boundaries which people don't respect. People in authority do not respect. Part of being in authority is that you constantly express your authority to reassure yourself that you're in charge. So that's why we do what we do with our bosses, right? We're always trying to reassure them they're the boss. But eventually they start to snap up here as they get older, or whatever, I don't know. When their boss puts pressure on them, then they come along and I want this for half the price. I want this to, what's your problem? And then I behave differently. And then if there aren't checks and balances, because these systems are designed not to fail. I mean, engineers or whoever spent years trying to make sure these things will not fail. If something fails, it's because a human decided to go rogue. And usually a human in power who had, a nightmare, or who had his wife, left him or whatever, and he went nuts.
Well, and two, it's sort of like with natural systems in that same sense, because people end up demanding too much of these things. For example, like with roadways, for example, if like there's a roadway and everything's fine for a few years, but then let's say a new supercenter opens up off the turnpike, and suddenly there's a bunch of traffic, and people don't want to wait at the traffic light that the engineer put in, or they're going too fast because they want to get to the supercenter. Then the whole system sort of collapses because people don't abide by the system.
Yes. Well, the thing I like to attack or pick on the word natural. So imagine this story.
Right.
One of my teachers told me this story. He was trying. My job is process control. He was trying to explain to me the problem with process control. So he said, imagine a farm. So the farm has a farmer and it has a cow, and the cow follows this path through the meadow. And every day they do this. And of course, there's a big boulder over here, and there's a patch of trees over there. So they follow this zigzag path to go from the farm to the meadow and back. So after years and years, he sells the farm and they decide to build a roadway, but they have to build the roadway. They choose to build the roadway in this funny zigzag pattern. And then as cars get faster and better, they end up getting into accidents. So they say, well, we're going to put a stop sign here. We're going to put a stop sign there, lights. And they put all these safety precautions. And then this other guy comes along and he says, wait a minute, but if you look at it from a bird's eye view, we could have just made a straight line.
We could have just moved the dang boulder and made a straight road.
Yeah. Why did you? Well, we did that because that's what, when the guy
That's just what we always did, right?
And that's the danger of, and I think artists are trying to break those molds, whether they're photographers or whatever. They're trying to find new ways to solve problems. Why? Well, the question is always why.
No, I'm glad you poked me on that one, because
We're not
because I
natural.
mean,
We're not
even
natural.
yeah, there is no natural. Even at the beginning of that whole thing, where the farmer's just going up the hill, none of that's particularly natural. I mean,
No, the
just from the
animals are
fact that,
natural.
well, the cow is not natural.
No,
The
no.
cow that the farmer is using is actually a special breed that was, that came all the way from the Auroch and whatever that
Yeah.
was developed by humans.
Caribou
I
are
mean,
natural.
but then that's saying that humans aren't natural too.
Well, no, we're all natural. See,
Yeah.
So now you get into a subject that I'm close to. See, if this planet over 1 million years evolved caribou, and if the caribou follow the cycles of the planet, and they migrate and they do all that, then you could say that they're in tune with this ecosystem, this environment. And this ecosystem environment is very stable, so they follow certain patterns and they've evolved together. The problem with humans is we've evolved so quickly in the last, few seconds. So if existence was 24 hours, in the last few seconds of existence, we've evolved so much that we've basically outdone what nature tried to do in 24 hours. We did in the last few seconds, last 100 years of. So we cannot be sustained. But my point is, if you go farther back and look at humans, well, nature developed or designed humans, so therefore there must be a bigger system, the universe, the cosmos, God, whatever, who designed humans for an end purpose. So maybe we are here to destroy the planet so that we can become, I don't know, we can create these artificial intelligence that will rule the universe, that can build worlds.
Sort of like in The Answer. Have you read Isaac Asimov?
Yes, Isaac Asimov has a wonderful story. I'm not sure. I have read it.
The Answer? Is it the one where they build the supercomputer and the supercomputer says, "And let there be life," right?
Yes, and it starts over again.
Yeah. But here's what I actually wonder. I think too. There's a person who's always popping up these days amongst my generation's discourse. H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh.
And I wonder whether, when we talk about like the Anthropocene is what they call it, where we consider, we humans, we've surpassed nature and we're guiding the planet. When you talk about exactly the larger systems that are going on, right? I wonder whether, when we think about the Anthropocene, think about we're ruining the planet, we're not actually just making the mistake of getting so bound up in the human representation of the planet that is human focused because we are humans, that we can't see the bigger picture. Like there's George Carlin. He did a whole bit on the end of the world, basically, where he said, maybe all we humans were meant to produce was plastic, because the planet will go on without us and it'll just incorporate plastic into itself like it's already doing.
Yes.
And like he ends the skit by going, "What is the meaning of life? Plastic."
That's it, from our perspective. But
well,
imagine, Russell. What do you as an artist? What do you do with, assuming you're an artist? What do you do with paper? You throw ink on.
What do I do with paper? Oh, I waste it. Right. I waste it.
Why? Why do you waste it?
I think because it's sort of like, well, we can go back with that line of reasoning you were talking about with engineering an artist, where with the hammer, for example, where you can use it for more things. Because the moment that I waste that piece of paper by putting a piece of artwork on it, or even better, if I were to say, well, I'm going to paint a picture on a piece of canvas, a rational person would say, what the hell did you just do? You just ruined a perfectly good piece of cloth that could have been made into clothing or shelter or anything. And instead, now it's only good for hanging on a wall and looking at. what am I going to do with this? And what's worse is you've used oil paints on it, which are expensive minerals, which are going to burn up if they get near a fire.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you, right? But by doing that, I'm extending that object beyond its use value
Mm-hmm.
and into a sort of metaphysical, philosophical value, right?
But nonetheless,
Because
you destroyed it.
the
Nonetheless.
yeah, nonetheless, I've destroyed its usefulness in a
Well, what
certain
it was.
sense.
What
Yeah,
it
I mean,
was,
you could
yeah.
still use it.
Yes.
Clearly, you could clip up the Mona Lisa, or like use any of Jan van Eyck's paintings on wood and burn them for heat. You could do that, but they in my line of thinking, one, by making them into these works of philosophical or artistic value, it's a revolutionary act, because you're saying, no, the world has more value than just the things that keep people clothed and sheltered. And two, where am I going with this?
It's okay. Keep going.
I've lost my thread there.
That's
But
okay.
there was another one. It's oh yes. It's also sort of a way of turning that thing from a tool that you can use to sustain the body into a tool that you can use to look at the world through.
Yes.
Right?
So
You
the
can
why.
make it into a different lens. Right?
Yes.
So I can look at the world through Jan van Eyck's paintings, or I can look at the world through a Cubist framework,
Yep.
or
Or
I can look at the
naturalist.
world through architecture or engineering.
Yes. So depending what level you are, you see purpose, differently. So from your
Yeah.
eyes, I need to destroy the paper, where somebody who's a naturalist or who sees the paper as like the planet. So I was going with this analogy as the planet. We're using the planet to do something, like you use the paper to achieve something for whatever purpose, whether it's to wrap a gift or to burn for heat or whatever, right? But the point is, we keep consuming, and the question is, why do we keep consuming? Well, animals consume to survive. We consume to survive plus. So it's not just our numbers that are changing this planet. It's also the fact that we behave in a slightly different manner. And we behave in a different manner because we have this front part of our brain that, is trying to look at things.
It's not just trying to live, but to be.
Yeah. So you have to keep destroying things to figure out what works and what doesn't work. A relationship, paper, the planet. So, and there's billions of us. So billions of people are trying to survive and to explore who and what they are. Can this planet sustain a billion horses? Yes. A billion wolves? Maybe not. But a billion humans? 20 billion humans? No. Right? So was this planet designed to have so many humans, right? I don't know. There's a limit.
I would say that there's a limit, just the same way that there would be a limit to horses and coyotes and deer, for example.
Except that we don't have an enemy that keeps us in balance.
Exactly, except ourselves.
Well, yeah.
Because eventually we're going to burn ourselves out if we don't do something soon.
So that's the checks and
Right?
balances. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, if we don't solve that problem soon, then then it's going to solve itself, right? When the reactor in Chernobyl exploded, it's because people didn't resolve it soon enough, and the reactor just decided, and the reaction just needed to happen, so it did.
Yep.
And we can resolve this problem that we have of overconsumption. We can do things to stop suffering immediately. But there are systems of power that are in place that are blocking those changes from happening.
Yes.
Because I would say that capitalism, in particular, argues that you need to live, but live plus, right? I liked that phrase you used, live plus.
Yes.
Because, when you think about buying the fancy new car or drinking a Coca-Cola, well, now you're not just living. Now you're not just drinking water or walking to work. You're driving a fancy car. You're drinking a Coca-Cola. You're living plus. But you're not being.
Yeah, animals don't look for plus. They just
You're
want to survive.
you're plus sizing your life for no
Plus
reason. Well,
plus valor.
Well,
I found only one of the two pens I was looking for.
Enough is never enough for us, because enough is, we're always looking for more and better, and that's the thing. That's a human quality. We're animals. Yeah, they will eat until they're full, but we cannot fill this. What's in our heart, our soul, our mind, we cannot fill. So
and I think the problem is that we keep getting told we can fill it by filling it with things, right?
Yeah. So that's why meditation, these kind of things, Zen, they figured out the problem 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, but nobody wants.
Except that you will always be empty in a certain sense.
But empty is being one with the universe. That's being the universe. By being empty, you become the universe. You are everything. So you will find, by being empty, you will be so fulfilled, you will stop eating.
You don't have to do this, but you can if you want. Find on YouTube, Dimitri, The Century of the Self.
Oh.
It's a documentary, the first one of which is about consumerism.
Let me write that down.
Huh?
I'll write it down.
And it was Sigmund Freud's nephew, Bernays, who decided that he was going to stick his fingers in the muck and teach Americans how the only way that they're going to be happy is if they consume.
And it worked.
And it worked.
Worked too well, like everything. It works too well.
Yes, Frederick was saying this is a pretty pen. It's a swan.
Oh my gosh!
With a little tiny bit of.
I want more.
Red hard rubber at the top, but I was looking for, the same day I got this from the same person. I got a swan that has this nib that I thought you'd like.
Okay.
And both that pen and this pen are swans that are made in England. Now, there's nothing wrong with swans that are made in England. But most of the pens that I have, just for my own sanity, are more or less limited to pens that I had the parts to fix. So domestic swans made in America and Waterman's made here. And but this pen might become available, but it's more expensive than the others that you've been buying. I mean, we can go up notches in terms of price. Here's another swan that is really, no, that's a Sherpa. Here's a swan that has a really big honking nib, about twice as big as the nibs on your pens. And it has a flexible broad nib.
Yes.
And
can I just point out the pun there, a big honking swan nib?
You can do whatever you want because you have to. Yes.
Please.
So
Wait. Before we move on from the swan puns, note that this book is from Leda Art Supply.
Mhm.
Yes.
Nice.
We're
And
talking
Leda,
Lita,
I
Lita
mean,
and the Swan. God, you're
Leda and the Swan, you got it!
oh,
cosmic connections are just oozing out of you,
Cosmic
Mr.
puns.
Cosmic Puns. Um, I know that you've gone much deeper in the subject of science and engineering and art, but I always think of art. Here's the world,
hmm
whatever it looks like today,
yep.
It's a lot smaller than
and
I
a
expected it.
and a scientist with his lab coat and his clipboard is looking at it and finding the facts and taking those facts and creating an experiment to prove a hypothesis, to discover a law of nature,
Yes. All about
which
laws.
which is what some scientists want. Other scientists take the laws of nature, they're more engineers maybe, and will take that and turn them into something that we
Produce.
consumers can buy tomorrow. An artist, on the other hand, with his beret and his beatniky beard and his easel, he looks at the same goddamn thing, and sees the same thing that the scientist sees, but he's looking for other things. And his canvas, when he's done with his canvas, this is essentially the same thing. It's equal, I think, to the theory that this scientist has, or that maybe it's more like the theory and the experiment proving the law. Here, the artist, this is their experiment that is not proving, but is giving an example to the the thought that they have about how the world works. So the world might be chaotic,
So,
and
so,
the
so, so
artist
I like.
creates some.
There's a philosopher who said it this way to go a level higher. We
Okay.
project meaning. We are meaning makers. So scientists, yes, they're trying to discover what the laws are, the underlying laws of the universe, but they're actually projecting meaning into their world. Artists project meaning. Engineers, so maybe that's what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that we're
Well,
all
I
putting
think
ourselves into what we're seeing.
scientists might suggest that they find not necessarily meaning, but they find the laws of nature. They try to look at the world maybe without meaning, trying to see it coldly.
But quantum
And
mechanics has proven
well, I
that
would
that,
then
that
read.
our consciousness will bring things into. So one of the most proven theories, you know, in existence for scientists, says that basically we make this world by our consciousness. So this is why you're right, but I'm going to say that if you look at it in a different way, we are creating the universe. We are creating this world moment by moment.
Yeah.
Back to the Matrix.
Well, am I wrong in thinking that that everything we see is actually, if I'm remembering it right, I'm probably wrong, but if I remember it right, then everything we see optically in our vision is actually just a reflection on the back of our cornea or whatever. And so what we're actually seeing is an illusion that our mind is creating of the world to make sense of it around us.
Well, it goes deeper than that. Everything in this universe is a vibration, is energy. So energy takes the form of, for example, light, because it has a certain frequency. For example, sound has a different frequency. For example, my bones have a different frequency. Everything has a frequency of vibration, and therefore it's energy. So if everything's energy, there is no matter. It's just energy. Now, the problem is that when you take something in, a vibration, energy, let's say green. Okay, so I see green, and it has a certain vibration. But I've grown with my experience and my culture to believe that green is related to leaves, and red is related to. But at the end of the day, you and I are seeing a frequency, and we get our own interpretation of what that is. So the green that you see and the green that I see are two different things, but it's just like the word apple. When I say apple, you get a picture in your mind, and I get a picture in my mind. But let's say somebody in Mars, the word apple could mean potato. So when they say apple, they envision a potato. The Martians, for example. So really, they're symbols, and then we apply meaning to them. And the energy that your cornea, or the vibration in your ear, is interpreted by all these files in your head. At a young age, you developed you related this sound to this word or person. There was a deaf person who got this ear transplant, and all it was 8 probes that would vibrate to create 8 tones. So when this person first heard a voice, a human voice, what they heard was squeaking and popping, and it wasn't really like a homogeneous, smooth sound. But as they their brain got accustomed to listening to these, because it's 8 bits of information. So our sound, our ear to hear things is thousands of bits of frequency, quantas or units of frequency, right? Because of the way how sensitive our ear is. But this person could only take the spectrum of sound and convert it into 8 frequencies groups. So therefore, but afterwards, once she got used to that, to her it sounded all smooth, and the popping and the beeping all went away. The mind was able to interpret it, and so we can't remember what it was when we were first born and we saw light for the first time and heard sound for the first time. What we see and hear today is what we've been taught to remember. So we don't actually see what's in front of us. We interpret what's in front of us. So to see like a child is a gift, right? Because we see things in their true state. Instead, all we do is keep remembering. So when you look at, so you talked about the physical phenomenon of light, and now I went to the human phenomenon of interpreting light. But light is just a vibration, and yes, how can you relate a vibration to red? Right? You can't. You are not really seeing light. Light hits your retina, and it's converted to a chemical or electrical signal that your brain can pull a file and says, oh, that's an apple. Because at the age of 2, I saw an apple. So that's why we never truly see something for the first time. All we do is remember it, unless it's something extremely unique. And maybe that's why we're always trying to find something new to get that incredible feeling. It's like a rebirth. To see something for the first time. It's a wonderful feeling, instead of keep remembering what a sunset looks like. Maybe that's why you're drawing all the time, because you're trying to experience things with a new, fresh experience.
Well, I haven't read Proust, but I do know about the whole bit where he's trying to remember the taste of Madeleines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you think about it, every time he tries to remember it, it's going to feel different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in a certain sense, when the artist is looking at something, they're trying to remember that experience. And and if they're drawing a physical tree or if they're drawing an abstract thing, it's a new memory of what they think of as an old memory, which is, trying to go back into a certain sense to that chaos and fury that one experiences as a child when they come screaming and wailing and sweating into this terrible place we call the universe.
Yes. Isn't that what gesture drawing is? Isn't gesture drawing where you try to get this momentary essence of a cup, versus people who draw like photographically, they're trying to copy what they're perceiving, right? Where
gesture drawing is basically about getting the basic outlines, right? So we usually tend to use it to refer to when we're practicing drawing the human figure. So you're trying to draw the human figure in motion very quickly, right? Just you get maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds. And so you have to get the big gesture of it, the grand strokes.
I don't think of those as being outlines.
Is that more realistic as far as capturing the energy of what you're trying to express versus the memory of what you're trying to express?
I don't think your memory gets into it. I think you don't. It's all right there in the moment. The model is holding a pose for 10 seconds. You saw how he or she got into the pose. You have 10 seconds to draw it. And rather than drawing an outline, a contour of their elbow and their shoulder and their foot, I always think of it as you're going, the gesture, their gestures, they're taking a pose that looks like they're walking and turning and twisting to see what they just stepped on. So their spine is like this. They've got a leg here, their head is down here, and then we're already to the next thing. So not a single one of these lines actually is descriptive of the body, but it is descriptive of the gesture of the figure, the action of the figure. That's how I see gesture drawing, but I don't know whether.
But what's the purpose of gesture drawing?
It's to get a couple of things. It's to get your brain off of the
remembering
calculus
what's
class, the calculus class you were at last, the last hour, and to get you into the figure drawing, to get you into the idea that this is a person that moves, a live person, not a dead one, not a still life. It's to get you into moving your hand around, getting your muscles in your hand
out of your
away from this, what you've been doing in calculus class for the last hour. You're doing this. So it does a bunch of stuff to get you relaxed and in the moment. I think that's how I see gesture drawing. Gesture drawings were always leading up to the 5-minute pose, which was then leading up to the 10-minute pose, which was then leading up to the hour-long pose. And I wanted to, I don't do hour-long poses. I'm not very good at gesture drawings. I think it's kind of a waste of time. The 5-minute pose and the 10-minute pose are what I do. I'm not fast enough for the gesture, and I'm not anal enough for the hour long or even half hour. So what do you say, Russell?
For me, the purpose of gesture drawing was always to build up the muscle memory, right? So the problem with drawing generally, I think I'm probably oversimplifying it, but it's the disconnect between your mind and your hand, right? Part of the eternal problem I have is that I constantly am thinking of all of these things I can do, but I'm not fast enough or good enough to do them. So gesture drawing helps to, I think, bring those two things into rhythm, right? At least more into rhythm than before. So whereas if I tried to jump into doing like Albrecht Dürer praying hands,
Yeah.
just waking up right in the morning, it's not going to work out that great unless I'm having a really good day.
Yeah.
But if I start by practicing, like just really, really quick a few times beforehand, then I can go ahead and do it.
Got the essence. Yeah. Another thing, when we talk about perception, it's the idea when you look into a mirror, the mirror is perceiving you. So we talk about how accurate the mirror renders you, your reflection, right?
Well, we don't talk about how accurately you render the reflection in the mirror, right?
We're going to get to that.
Yeah, sorry.
So, because you're ahead of me. That's good. So, because I'm going to liken it to us. So you could polish your mind like a mirror. A mirror has a certain polish, and it has a certain flatness, so it reflects it reflects light, its true essence. So if it's designed and built perfectly, you will get a like reflection. But the human mind, when it perceives, it distorts. So I might see women as all being thin skeletons, or in the 1600s, they were all more rounded and full. So as artists or as humans, we perceive things skewed. It's training in the mind to see what's truly there without distortion that in one hand, I gravitate to, but on the other hand, I hate, because it's all about imposing meaning onto reality that is totally absurd, and I love that. So you could try to be a realistic painter, or you could try to be somebody who's just impressionistic, right? And I think that's what humans are like. We see the world, people, as we, not as they are, but as we perceive them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not really seeing who's in front of us. It's hard.
Yeah, there's and I can't remember the playwright. He was a Spaniard, 15th century, but the phrase that came up in a video I watched was "Sueños de sueños, sueños son," right? Mm-hmm. Dreams are dreams of dreams.
Yes. That's incredible.
Which I mean, that's one of the reasons I like Don Quixote, because in a sense, the story is about Don Quixote being in like this grand illusion, but suddenly there's all of these things that sort of correspond to his illusion, and people play along with him in the second book of the series and start to turn his fantasies into realities. And I mean, there's even this character who shows up whose name I can't remember. I think it's Inés. No, not Inés de Pasamonte. But it's a bandit, essentially. And Don Quixote always describes his journeys of the knight as being like, well, I always have to be on guard, and I always have to be ready to fight, and I can't sleep at night, and all of that stuff. Well, the bandit who he meets lives exactly like that. He never sleeps at night. He's always looking out for conspiracies. He's going off on these grand adventures that nobody knows about whenever he leaves his band of men. And they're performing all of these. They're performing acts of banditry, yes, but they're also doing good deeds, and he's acting like a gentleman. And so he's living out the reality of Don Quixote's fantasy aside from Don Quixote. Mm-hmm. It's very funny.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's also a scene where Don Quixote gets run over by a herd of sheep and loses like a bunch of teeth. So, and then he vomits in Sancho Panza's face. It's a great book.
Yes. Yeah, I've never read it.
I highly recommend it. I've only read the version that so far in English that was translated by Urquhart, and then when Urquhart died, I think it was Molyneux took over the second bit. So it's sort of like Urquhart's work is fantastic, Molyneux less so. I still have to read the most modern English version. Spanish version obviously is the best one to go with, but of course there's an accessibility for us English speakers.
Yes.
Raised in America, always had the convenience of having the language of money on our side, so we didn't have to learn any others.
Yep. And it's hard as you get older to learn a new language.
Not harder, but well, harder in different ways. I mean, as a child, you can just experience it if you're living around it. If you try to take a child and put them into classes like Spanish classes, I can tell you from a firsthand experience that doesn't work.
No, eh?
But if you take a child and bring him to Spain to live,
yeah,
he's probably going to pick up a bit of Spanish here and there.
Yeah.
The barrier to language is really just the amount of time and physical and contact with the language.
Yes. Yeah, I find whenever I go back to where I was born, Greece, words just, I start talking to people, words just come into my mind. So I'm like, how do I know all these words, right? So they're buried somewhere, and I haven't used them for 25 years. I go to visit, and all these words pop up. It's like, oh, okay.
It's like a muscle memory. It wakes those things up, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
It's like, and my Spanish is terrible, especially compared with my Italian. But even when I'm working, or rather when I go to like a Mexican restaurant, and I hear the accent even when they're speaking English to me. Sometimes, like occasionally, I'll have to stop myself or catch myself before I let slip a Spanish word. Right?
Yeah. Interesting how that works. Yeah. I think we relate. Yeah. There is a memory, yes.
And frankly, I don't want to be the jackass American that starts trying to speak Spanish to the waiter at the Mexican restaurant, right?
Right.
But that's just me.
Yeah, so I think you are, as an artist, you're aware of perception. As an engineer, I'm aware of these laws and physics and scientific, but I use them in a way that I don't really care what they mean or why. I just want to use these tools. So, as a scientist just want to understand everything to the basic principles. So, an artist,
in a sense, I'm sorry. I'll just shut up because all I'm gonna do is bring up another reference.
That's okay. Go ahead.
There's Enzo Iannacci, who is an Italian singer. What is it? Cantatore. Yeah. He did one song, Vengo Anch'io, No to No, where he basically talks about people. Where there's a line where he goes, let's go to the zoo and say the lions escaped and see what kind of effect it has.
Yeah.
It's I don't know why I brought that up, but it came up whenever you talked about like looking at the effects, and I wonder whether that's an artistic act or an engineering act.
Well, see,
And
here we are.
certain sets could be
We're
both.
pigeonhole. And this is where we started our conversation. I think when we first started talking, we talked about how people are trying to pigeonhole me, and I'm trying to pigeonhole. And I think humans do that. So we try to say that part of Dimitri is a scientist, part of Dimitri is an engineer, part of Dimitri is an artist, right? But what is Dimitri? No clue. So that's the problem. We need to get away from trying to fit society norms, which say that, you know, is that person
This
behaving as
this.
an artist? Is that person behaving as and just get past all that, right? Because some things just don't fit. The only reason why we pigeonhole things is because we're in a rush. We don't want to spend 10 years really understanding something. But obviously, Pierre, if he's listening, um, he spent 30, 40 years trying to understand what this ink and paper and pointy objects do. So he's dedicated a lot of time, right? Now the point now is, can he continue? Can he continue this, or has he shut down his perception? And that's where we started our conversation, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
He sees me. He sees me quickly, without spending 10 years studying or learning about who I am. He sees me and says, "Okay, you're like this, and you're like that." But I know he spent many, many, many hours really trying to understand things, but he's not doing it across the board. And that's, I think,
Well,
the enemy of a
nobody
true
can do
artist.
that.
I'm sorry.
Nobody can do that completely.
Right.
I mean,
And
that's a big demand.
yes. Well, it's a limited resource. Time is a very limited resource for us. Energy,
Mm-hmm.
time. But I think some artists, I've experienced certain artists, and they fight that. I mean, they fight. Oh, I love what Picasso said. I think this is, hopefully it's a true quote from him. Picasso said that he's not like a normal human being. He's more like God. Why? Because normal humans will spend 20 years of their life developing a bread mold, and then the rest of their life making bread. God God invented rabbits and whales and whatever, and he's more like God. He's constantly creating new things. So that's where I got a really interesting, based on that quote, which I heard 25 years ago. I got this impression of who Picasso was. Not that I know Picasso. You probably know him better than I do.
Well, I would say he was certainly the kind of fellow who would compare himself to God.
He sure was. He's Spanish.
I need to leave, but I
Oh
will
no!
tell you. I will tell you a
We want
funny.
to talk about pens
I will. Yes, I know that, but
next time.
no, I can reconvene in a minute. But I just wanted your quote made me think of a Frank Lloyd Wright story, which may or may not be true. It doesn't make any difference. It should be true if it isn't. He
Right.
was at a architecture school giving a talk, and afterwards he was invited reluctantly to see the studio where the architects were working away on their various projects, and some eager architect insisted that Frank take a look at his drawing and asked his opinion. And Frank Lloyd Wright said, each of us designs fuck me. That's not what he said. Each of us designs God's work in their own way. You in yours and mine in his.
Yes.
Hmm.
Which I thought was, if it isn't true, it should be.
Well, we are godlike. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
property that. Yeah.
if saying saying one is godlike is one way to go. I'm of the other. I'm more slime in the ooze like than I am like God.
Pierre, you know why you say that? Because you're in
Why
touch.
do
You're in touch with that part of your essence.
the slimy part? Yes.
Right. But if you get in touch with the part of you that is eternal, the part of you that is limitless,
The
boundless,
the
then you will.
boundless slime. Well,
Then
no,
you will.
I appreciate your desire to move me into the divine rather from
You are
the gutter.
divine. A part of you is divine, and you have to come. You have to come to terms with the
I
two.
have to, okay. Um,
Ew,
On
that
that-
defines profane.
yes. On that note, I'm going to do one thing though. I need to send off an email to
Yep.
a particular person, and I have been unable to find the pen I wanted to find for you. My pens in my house can exist in many different locations, and usually they I know where they are within broadly speaking. They're either on my desk, in my pocket, or somewhere on a different desk, as if because I took the pens out of my pocket. Occasionally they go in an area that I need to fix a pen, so they'll go in a fix-it drawer, and occasionally they will go into the actual collection where they could be in any number of other places. This one, I saw it probably 10 times before I remembered that only the top part of it was this red color. Was in my imagination, I was thinking the whole thing was red, but I was wrong. But the pen I was looking for you, I did bring a dozen or so pens to Minneapolis with me, knowing that I was going to return. And I was thinking that, rather than me going through the trauma every time I go back there
Yeah.
in selecting the pens I want to bring to use, I could have included that in the pens that I would use. Though I don't know why I would necessarily do that, but it might be there.
Yes.
Anyway,
But there's
that
always
doesn't
another
mean-
time for that one.
it doesn't
What I'm wondering
doesn't
is,
mean that I don't have other pens that I want to sell you. And as I was looking for
Good.
that, I found a bunch of other ones.
good.
So,
So how
but
much time do you need? You want me to get? We can get back in a few hours if you like.
I do have a few things I need to do. I also have to call the laundry people about my little laundry card to find out which card is mine because I have lost mine. So I'm using my neighbor's. But the office has a bunch of cards that were lost, and I want to find out if one of those is mine. So I have to call up thing to find out what the serial number is.
Mhm.
Anyway, I've got a number of things I have to do today. Whether I have time, I know essentially that you got a mixed bag in terms of nibs. None of the nibs that you got had the word very used twice in describing its nib. It wasn't just fine, it might have been very fine, but it might not have been very, very fine, and it might not have been very, very flexible. So I know
Right.
that I can go in that direction with you.
Okay, good.
There's always ways to go in that direction, but your desire to get a Swan or a Conway Stewart is something I want to discuss with you. Did you pick those names out of a hat? Were
Only because I don't have them. And I
okay?
assume,
Well, you don't.
You
You
know,
don't have all sorts of old pens,
well,
so
my point is that I'm very ignorant and
okay,
I'm grasping in the dark,
I see. Okay,
saying it must be better, it must be different.
they are different. I mean, they're different in some ways. They're the same in other ways. Um, when Canada was asking me if I noticed that there was a difference between Swan and Waterman nibs, I grabbed a dozen of each and I tried them out, and many of them overlapped and were similar, and some of them, the Swan nibs, I thought were a little tiny bit pricklier and finer, but that
Okay.
might just be because the ones I managed to have in those pens were, I was looking at pens of the same era, early 1900s. I didn't look later at the plastic pens, um, but they're, uh, I don't really think that there's going to be that big a difference between
Good. Good.
pens from 1900 and 1940 made by any good manufacturer. They all made firm nibs, they all made flexible nibs, they all made stub nibs, they all made all the different kinds of nibs. So, um, whether there was some other aspect of a Swan or a Conway Stewart that you liked,
Hmm.
that was the question I would ask.
No, I have no clue. I haven't tried them. It's
Yeah.
just that my problem is I look at too many calligraphers write, and I'm assuming that it's partly the pen, and now I know
It's,
because I saw your writing
yeah,
with those pens, and I
yeah.
know it's you, not the pen.
Well, it is the way that the pen work is 99% the pen and 1% me or something.
No,
But
I think it's
or
like 50-50.
but
It's 50%
the
you, 50% the pen.
okay, 50, but the
Give yourself more credit.
the well, I know I okay, let's pretend in an alternate universe there's peer 1 and peer 2.
Oh,
And
two.
I'm
There's
identical.
probably
I'm
1,000 peers.
I'm equal. Let's just deal with one of them is enough. Let's just deal with two. Let's say they're equally talented, whatever. And we're both calligraphers. I, this peer would like this pen and get 99% of what it can do to make his calligraphic squiggles. The other peer would do the same thing with a different pen. It's, when we are dealing with the pen is really, really important. But um, I don't know whether someone using a Conway Stewart that's fine and flexible will be any different from a guy using a Waterman that's fine and flexible. I think they're 99%
Of course.
equal.
Okay,
Now,
but there's some pens they snap back like quicker,
well, that's
right?
that you can find that
It's the
nib.
metal,
You can find those nibs throughout all of pendom. It's
right?
not a particular company that said, I'm going to make snappy pens. It
No.
was, the snappiness is something that I see a lot in vintage gold nibbed Victorian pens. And it's a term that I use. It's not necessarily something that a calligrapher likes it, but I don't know whether a normal writer would like it. So that
Mhm.
that ability for a nib to do that was probably not high on the list
No.
of pen manufacturers to make a nib that would do that. They would make flexible nibs that were more easily understandable and usable.
Mhm.
Those snappy nibs, they are very much like a very high performance sports racing car,
Yeah.
where
specific.
only very few people have the skill set to drive them.
Hmm.
Whereas uh, other nibs that are very, very, I mean, I could drive a high performance race car to the grocery store to buy some milk, and I could do it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the car would break down because I don't know how to use the clutch correctly.
Hmm.
But the but so it's not necessarily something that you find often, that snappiness that I like.
Because
Um,
demand is low demand,
because the
right?
demand was low in 1900.
So they
I mean, it
produce
wasn't.
very few.
They're relatively rare in the sense
Hmm.
of uh, of
So
fountain pen.
really, so we come full circle. Then really, we're back to talking about nibs, not whether it's a Conway
Yeah,
Stewart or
we're always in
yeah.
my
So I
my
don't really
book.
care
We're
then.
almost always talking about nibs,
Yeah, it's
and
just that I saw some people write with them like, oh,
you know,
maybe it's the
no, it's
manufacturer
not. It's not. I don't think that there was any single company
perfected.
that perfected a certain kind of a nib.
Yeah, they all did it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Russell. Thank you for explaining. I thought it was something I said. I know it would never be anything I said. I don't. I think Russell and I are we're on a level where anything that can come out of our pie hole at the other person will be taken with as much salt as is needed. I
Well,
can't
yes.
imagine we would ever do anything to be intentionally hurtful
No, no.
or or I've got other friends that sometimes cross the line, and their humor is a little more pointed, and sometimes I can laugh with them even though I'm crying inside. But um, anyway, so Dimitri, I also
Yeah,
have to
do your
do
work.
a drawing for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now you can just imagine
Hmm.
what sort of drawing I have to do for them, and
Yeah,
how uh, not unpleasant a task, but how
tedious.
narrow a task.
Hmm.
I've essentially finished the uh, the repetitive part of the drawing. It's drawing the Great Hall from the front in the center, and where all 15 or whatever number of columns, ionic columns they're all identical, and they're all seen identically the same.
Hmm.
It's a symmetrical building, so the left and the right sides are identical. So, but now I draw the trees, and the trees are uh, not governed by the rules of
Symmetry.
asymmetry. So
They have to be natural.
they get to be natural. So I can spread my wings a little bit.
Good.
Um, anyway,
Okay.
what I'd like you to do for your homework, doesn't have to
Hmm.
be today, but see if there's a way. Now you're using your computer, right?
Hmm. My
Is
iPad.
there a you're using an iPad,
Yes.
and the iPad has two cameras on each side, each
Hmm.
front and back. Figure out if there's a way. Now I'll just show you a way that I have used mine. Here, there's drawers.
Yes.
Now these could be a set of Encyclopedia Britannica books
Hmm.
stacked up.
Oh, I see.
I pull this out, I put the iPad in, I have the
Nice.
iPad aiming down at
Hmm.
where my hands are. I
Okay.
can see the top, and I'm able to
Hmm.
show how I'm holding the pen or how I'm making a letter or whatever. And I'd love you to do that too. There's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with your pretty face, of course. Uh, but when we're talking about pens and the lines we're making and stuff, it's fun to actually see those. So
Yes.
see if you can. Let me just do this here. Turn the camera around so you can see my pretty face.
Hmm. There you
Uh,
are.
Here I am. If there's a way where you can take a stack of books,
Hmm.
that's really the easiest I've found for
Yeah.
for a normal person. You don't often have a set of drawers like I do.
No.
But if you have a box
Hmm.
and a
Hmm.
shoebox, 2 shoe boxes and a heavy book,
Hmm.
or whatever, or 10 heavy books,
Mhm.
or a couple of heavy books on top. You just want to have it be strong enough and heavy enough to hang 3/4 of the iPad over the brink.
Mhm.
And that gives you perfectly good room for your hands to move around.
Hmm.
And as long as the iPad screen is below your eyeballs, you're
Mhm.
able to see what I'm doing and you can see what you're doing.
Okay.
And
Oh, okay.
and then you also have to have the light,
Yeah.
coming sort of from the side, so you don't there's not a shadow of the iPad covering what you're doing.
Mhm.
So it's essentially
Work on that.
uh, trying that out, and
Mhm.
you should be able to manufacture it in uh, no time at all.
Mhm.
I have trust in you. The stack of books will be in front of you, not to the either side of where you're working, but in front of you. Otherwise, your hands will get in the way.
Right.
The books will get in the way of your arm and your hand. So,
Mhm.
uh,
I have an idea. Yep.
okay, there you go.
We'll work on it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thanks.